Welcome to the Arrow Podcast. My name is Chris Mulvaney from CMDS. Today, I'm excited to have George Vellios on the podcast. We're going to learn a little bit about George's business today.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate the time.
Yeah. All right. Let's roll it. So, George, thanks again for coming in today. I'm excited to have you here. I love the dialogue that we have and hanging out. You are such a class act. Even how you show up today. You know, you got everything.
I don't have the muscles and the tats and all the good looks like you do to be able to break out the shirt.
Too much. We'll never get anywhere in this podcast. Keep going.
I'm trying to go after the the tailored look here for a little bit.
Yeah. I know you've always been a class act, and I love your style and everything that you do. So I'm excited to have you on. I think there's a big need for what you do. Why don't you start off by telling me a little bit about who you are, your company, for our audience, and then we can get some cool questions.
Sure. And again, thanks. Really love your digs here. One of my favorite spots to come to. So my name is George Vellios. I'm the managing partner of Straxo. What we do, Chris, is handle all things that have to do with professional development, management training, leadership development, a lot of team synergies, buildings. We work with companies that range anywhere from high growth startups all the way to some of the biggest Fortune 500 companies. No matter what industry, there's always one common denominator, Chris, and that is, you're only as good as your people. Mm-hmm. And what we've seen recently, and I'd say for the last decade or so, is probably an influx of what do we do to start developing our most valuable asset, which is our employees. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we handle. We handle everything that has to do with the development of the employees.
That's great.
Yeah.
Very cool. How long have you been doing this for?
So I was in the corporate world for about 22 years.
Yep.
So I'm definitely aging myself here, right? Mm-hmm. And the firm is actually 10 years young this June.
That's great. Yep.
Yeah, so we'll definitely have a little celebration for that. And of course, you're welcome.
Nice.
And, what made me figure out that this was the track I wanted to go into, because, corporate, the deal, Chris. You're in there.
Yeah.
I was in a C-suite position for many years, working in the, learning and development, some of the HR aspects of it. And, just after a while, you just started getting the itch. And, started, funny story is I was trying to dabble a little bit in this back in the 2008, 2009, I would probably say. And then around 2010, 2011, started to, pick up a few side projects while I'm still working corporate, just to see if this was something I wanted to do. And I don't know if you're aware of these escape rooms, but back in 2010, 2011, there were hardly any of them. There was only
of course.
handful,
I'm totally aware
maybe.
of the escape room. Yep.
Yeah, now there's one in every block, but back then there weren't any. And so it was like 2 or 3, and I remember an entrepreneur had called me from, way up in Connecticut, and he's like, hey, I'm opening up, one of the very first escape rooms. I wasn't connecting the dots as to what exactly he needed. And he's like, getting a lot of these companies that are coming in and they're doing this, and they're asking us, well, how do we communicate? How do we do? So I was like fascinated. So I went up there and I said, well, do you have a control room? And we would watch how all of these companies' employees act and behaved in the room, and who solved their way out and who didn't. And then we decided, why don't we start profiling them? That's a lot of my background, is a lot in psychology profiling and working with the emotional intelligence, and I work with a lot of the C-suite folks to try to figure out, how they act and behave and what the culture looks like.
Right.
So we're like, what if we kind of, reverse this a little bit? What if we put in the room some of the most type A type CEOs we can find? So I started profiling a whole bunch of them within the region, and I found like 5 of the most
type
you could just only imagine, right?
Everybody fighting in the room.
Bull in a china shop.
Oh, yeah.
So we put them
especially in like tight quarters, right?
Oh my goodness, it was great. And so we put them in the room, and they have 60 minutes to solve their way out. And as soon as they start, I go back to the control room so I could listen and see everything. And what do you think? Did they solve their way out?
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah, you're right. You're spot on. They didn't. A lot of the things we would hear is, that's great, go ahead, execute on that. Good idea. Go ahead and do that.
Right, because they're used to being a leader.
Right? It is, and then too many of them in the room, they didn't solve their way out. So then we started profiling those very relationship building, people oriented, high energy. No matter what instruments or tools you're using, whether it's an I or type that's really about the people. So we went to a nearby university, found a couple sororities, fraternities, ordered a heck load of pizza because you got to feed these kids first, right?
Yep.
had them do some of these profilers, and I mean, we plucked the ones that were like the most bubbly, outgoing you can get. We put 6 of them in the room, and what do you think? Did they solve their way out?
I'm guessing not. No.
Yeah, you know what? It was a happy hour on steroids, and
Right.
so they were having a blast. If they could have stayed in the room for 4 hours, they would have.
Right. Yep.
My favorite of all groups was the very analytical ones.
Okay.
We're talking MIT, aerospace engineers.
Right.
I mean, the whole pocket square math. You know,
Right.
now they're probably running some AI company, right?
Right.
These guys. We put them in the room, and with this one, Chris, I did something a little different. I actually told them, listen, before we start, this fire extinguisher here, it's part of the room. It's not a prop. It's part of code. Don't touch it. So when I left, the owner came to me and started saying, well, why would you say that? I'm like, I have a little hunch. Let's go back. We put the headphones on, and let me ask you, do you think that these very analytical, very methodical, did they solve their way out?
I'm guessing not, based on how you're communicating.
Yeah,
stuff,
right.
so-
It's always the tale of the story. It's, try to get
Right,
that.
yeah.
A lot of people say yes, they would.
Right.
Um,
I would think that
they got
would.
very
That's-
close,
yeah.
but here's what happened. About 3-4 minutes in, they couldn't help themselves. They actually lifted the fire extinguisher off the wall, even though I told them not to.
Right.
That's- turning it upside down, they're looking at the expiration date, thinking it's a 4-digit code to open a lock, and they get
Right.
fixated.
Oh, jeez.
Dude, it was wild. They spent about 22 minutes just fixated on this. So time ran out. Classic example of paralysis by analysis, right?
Yep.
So I share this story because, A, it's a metaphor for how companies act and behave. But that moment in time, we started getting some requests from these companies saying, hey, that's some interesting stuff.
Right.
What are we doing for our managers so they can understand these dynamics? What are we doing to build high-performing teams? What are
Right.
we doing for our leadership development? Because the gap between leadership and management is significant.
Right.
And so that is really what got me into thinking, you know what? There's a need.
Mm-hmm.
We certainly can do things in a very different way in our
Right.
model. We can, discuss that later, but that's kind of where I decided, all right, hasta la vista,
Yeah.
corporate,
Right.
and hello, Straxo. And that's how
Wow.
it happened.
So if somebody is looking to hire you, we'll talk in. Actually, let's talk about client type first, right? So is there any sort of like industry you focus on? I know you said that there's a range in size of company that you work with.
Yeah, so great question. We get it all the time, and one thing's I just to tell you how much I admire you and what you do at CMDS, because I've been I've known you for a couple of years now, and I have to tell you that how you pivoted throughout the years is really a model for what we want to do with our firm, Chris. So just know that
Yeah,
my
thank you very
entire
much for
team are
saying that.
huge
Yeah.
fans of CMDS.
And I told you didn't have to make me.
I know. I'm
feel
allowed
good
3
over
of
here.
them. No problem. Yeah. I just went out to, Levine and
The other guys in the crew.
the other guys that,
I
they
don't know,
knocked
man.
it out of the
They
park.
never. This guy shows up today with donuts, munchkins, and wine for me.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Class
the wine's for
actors.
you and your wife,
Right, yeah.
and the munchkins is for the staff.
Right, yes.
So, depending on how well they edit this and make me look good on camera, there might be more wine coming. But
That's great.
But the way we pivoted was we originally were starting a lot with, what can we do in certain sectors? And then I realized that doesn't matter. We have manufacturing, we have retail, we have finance, we have PE,
Right,
we have
similar to us, yeah.
yeah,
So-
we have almost every industry you could think of. Healthcare,
Right.
a lot of healthcare, and whether they're startup, high growth. We started with a company that only had 66 employees. Now this company, Philadelphia-based company, is valued at $36 billion.
Wow.
I mean, and
Jeez.
it's just wild, and so some of our clients, include, national and international. So we definitely do a lot of travel when it comes to making sure that we have a presence on the ground. I'd probably say the small to mid-sized business is probably our favorite.
Yep.
And so we've kind of customized a very unique solution for that.
Yep.
Because the problem is with a lot of these other quote-unquote training firms or consultancies, they'll jack up the hours on the coaching.
Right.
Everything is a la carte. You want 2 trainings, you want the brief sessions, you want this. And so our model is very unique where we handle everything. You airlift us in, we'll do all of your coaching, all of your training, all of your digitization, all of your learning tech, and it probably comes out to less than what you would pay a part-time employee.
Right.
And because of this model now, we're at, I think, 88% referral based,
Yeah.
which is wild.
Yeah, I would assume so.
Yeah, and the other stat that I think we're very proud of is the average retention rate for professional services firms is about 1 year, 8 months.
Right.
We're averaging 5 years, 4 months.
Yeah,
so
that's
it's
great.
pretty wild.
Yeah, yep.
And once we're in with the client, usually I'll get invited to the CEO's kids' weddings and
Yep,
things like that. More wine, right?
Right.
So I need to stock up on a lot of wine. So I don't know. I know your kids are going off to college soon. So, when you're having those parties, keep me in mind.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. Yeah, no, we're similar in that instance too. Average client retention's around 8 years. Employees,
Wow.
6.25. So.
Yeah, I mean, if we can just be a fraction of what you've done with your firm, I think we're hitting the jackpot here. But we've been growing like this. The post-COVID situation for us has actually been good for business. What we've noticed is a shift in people now going a lot more into the workplace, but there's a problem.
Yeah.
And the problem right now is that you have all these multi-generations in the workplace.
Right. Yep.
So the Gen Zers are now coming in. 78, 79% of the workforce, that's managers right now, or millennials, and they're the least trained population.
Got it.
So now you have them, and you have folks like me. I'll just say I'm more of the Gen X realm, right?
Yep.
And, we're seeing like our kids coming into the workplace now, and they're acting and behaving a lot like mom and dad
Right.
from back then. So now you're having different ways that people are motivated. This
Right.
new group coming in, they actually want training as their number one request is how can I develop, where maybe the footprint for some of the other generations is a little different. So
Interesting.
yeah, you have to be able to kind of feed the beast, but also do it in a way that's efficient and tactful.
Yeah. Are you willing and able to disclose the client or the brand names that you work with?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So tell me.
We're proud of them. We work with Union Pacific, which is a massive railroad company headquartered at Omaha, Nebraska. Lidl, we have the Americas business when it comes to leadership development. They're a fantastic client.
Right.
Love them so much. I knew about them in Europe because having traveled often to Greece, because I'm Greek, first generation, and we have family and a home out there. Growing up, I would see the supermarkets, and then fast forward, now they're opening a U.S. presence, and we're working with them for a couple of years now. That's great.
Yeah, that's great.
We have several healthcare companies, PE firms, manufacturing.
Yep.
Dispersed all over. So
Right.
although we're headquartered in Red Bank, New Jersey, I spend a lot of my time in Times Square, New York City. I think I've started my career there in the mid-'90s, and I'm still there. Like,
Right.
I don't think I'll ever give that part up. But our clients right now, we're in about 37 states, and I'd say 8 countries
Wow.
that we have a presence in terms of delivering trainings. It's not just all virtual. We do them on site too. But our clients for us that make the most, where we feel we make the most impact, are definitely the ones that are maybe a department of one,
Right.
or everything falls on the shoulders of the HR person, let's
Right.
say, and all of a sudden they think HR is also professional development and training, and you'll have someone that will say, oh, sales trainings will go to this company, and management training will go here, or we'll bring in a coach to do X, Y, and Z. And next thing you know, while they're piecemealing things, they're running invoices that are in 6 figures.
Yeah.
So we're like, no, let's just do away with that. Let's have everything you need, all the services you need. So with the small to mid-sized business, we don't base it on revenue. It's employee count. So
Okay.
if a company has 50, 100, 300 employees, they can actually have the all-inclusive model, which for them is really cost certain. And I think those are the 2 most powerful words that we changed in our branding, is to let people know it's cost certain. No surprise at all, no invoice extras, nothing like that.
Yep.
We become an extension of your function, and that's why really I think I can go to any one of my clients, and there's probably a desk and a chair with a nameplate there for either my staff or for myself.
That's great. Yep.
Where we could just sit down and work out of there, and really become one with the company. As cliche as it sounds, that's really what drives our growth, is our service.
Yep. That's awesome. So, what challenges are you hearing in your intro call? And are they even defined, right? Like sometimes we'll have a lead or prospect come to us and they say, we really want to grow our business.
Yeah.
And it's not like, oh, we want you to do, business consulting for us, or manage our social presence or our presence on the internet in general. It's, we're looking to grow, or we're having this problem scaling. So when they, and then we direct and we determine like what they should be doing based on like a series of interviews and meetings and stuff like that. So what kind of questions are you hearing in the beginning that dictate, what your output's going to be for the client.
I think one of the traps that a lot of either training firms or HR firms that provide some of those services or other professional services do is that they will sit there and try to solve the problem on the spot by listening to the call. That's not my approach.
Right.
Mine is to ask a lot of questions to see if we want to equally work with them as they want to work with us, build a relationship. The pain points that usually are always top of mind, Chris, are, high turnover. We have new management. We're promoting people, but we don't, our bench is weak. This team's not playing well with this team. I mean, we have a couple of law firms we work with. It's a much different dynamic than, let's say, working with a manufacturing company or working with a retailer. And so trying to understand how their culture vibes a little bit, I think that word is important, is something. So we'll ask questions such as, what have you done already? What are you doing? What do you think you should be doing? And if they're like, well, that's why we're bringing you here, I'm like, I can help augment and point you in the right direction. But there's times we've turned prospects down because we just knew no matter what, we felt that this is one of those ready, fire, aim situations instead of it being the other way around. For a company that says, listen, I want a succession plan. I want to have 5-6 of my folks take over 3-4 years from now. So all of a sudden, we start getting these PE firms reaching out to us saying, hey, we have a portfolio company. We know 3 to 4 years from now, we want to sit there and get them ready. But we need to develop, because the multiples that they get on having a fine-tuned process procedure, they're learning technologies, digitization.
Definitely goes up,
They handle everything. And so when people are like, now you have someone that's really strong that can manage the operational side, no matter which client we are, we have a rule at our company is that we actually get to work and understand the product and the service. So whether it's a cookie company where they're helping bake cookies, if it's a retailer, we'll coordinate a day where we go to a distribution center or we'll work the cashier because I want my team to understand this is how it works, this is how it looks. If it's more financial behind the scenes, there's also much you can do, but at the very least, we try to spend some quality time on site. But they'll come to us. We invested, had a client. They said $200,000 on these assessments so that we can create our next group of leaders. Another client, $160,000 they spent on executive coaching.
Right.
And I have nothing against executive coaching. I think it's important for folks. We do targeted coaching. To me, the most important part is the middle, that middle management.
Right.
They're the ones that are on the floor. They're the front lines.
Right.
You can certainly augment the executives and let them get what they want, but that type of coaching. And so what happens is you're paying this high fee for these firms to come in and work with a small population.
Right.
When it's like water flows down.
Yeah.
You want to be a leader and influence, show that what you're doing is also cascading to the rest of the organization.
Right.
And there's very cost-effective methods that we have for them that allows them to do that and stretch their dollar. But sometimes they don't even know where the pain points are. What's a little annoying is they'll come in and they'll say, oh, we need to do compliance training. I'm like, well, we're not really HR, but we can design that and develop it for you. And they're like, well, typically is 6 months to do? And I'm flabbergasted by that. I'm like, where did you hear that? They said, well, it's a 6-month project. Here are the quotes we have. I'm like, no, with the technology now and AI and everything else, it's like a 4-day project.
Yeah. Yep.
So when you're honest with them and you explain what it is that you're doing, how you do it, and you build the trust, it's all around trust.
You're right.
And I tell people all the time, the reason we have folks coming in 5 years, 4 months on average, I have some that are with me since day one, 10 years.
Right.
I have a few of those. And we have some that since COVID, their business has changed or what's happened and things happened. But it's all about the relationship building.
100%.
And once you develop an employee, and we've had some leave, go on to bigger, better, and the phone rings, and it's them saying, "Hey, I'm over here.
Right. Yep.
How do we get your team in here?" And that's the one thing we value the most out of Straxo is
That's a great
the way
compliment. Yeah. Right. When somebody refers you, they've worked with you before and they want you back. It says a lot.
You could tell a lot just in the communication.
Right.
Sometimes if you see someone being very standoffish or it's an executive that's really just like, I just need to do this. Words that we avoid is need, must, check the box, order taking, like those type of things we avoid like the plague. I'd rather not have that business than to have it not really make a dent or make a change, because at the end it's that change that's
100%.
important.
Yep.
Because once they start to see that, and we track everything through ROI metrics too. A lot of people say, how do you quantify this? It's and it's hard when you're dealing with leadership and management development. There's so many different approaches out there and formulas, but at the end of the day,
and even variables too, right? Like personalities on the other side.
Oh,
Like
my
who's
God.
willing to change?
Yeah.
Right? 'Cause that's something we see a lot. You get into an organization that's maybe family owned, been in business for 50 or 100 years, and their team, a decent percentage of them have been there for a really long time too, and they know the old way, and they're not willing to evolve, right? So you probably run into that.
Oh
often.
my God, Chris! Well, talk about a tee-up question, my man.
No.
It's never going to go away. So
Right.
we call those legacies. The legacy folks that are there. I always hear this all the time because sometimes I'll get in and start having some of these meet and greets to get an idea as to what do the people actually think. So a lot of people say, "Oh, we'll do a survey on the." I'm like, forget the survey right away. Let's get on the floor and talk to some of these folks. And you hear things like change and systems, and that's not the way we did it. And back in the day,
More work.
more work.
Right. Yeah.
So and some of the companies now are trying to be smart in terms of let's streamline some processes.
100%.
Let's get rid of inefficiencies. If it really is something that one person can do, that's fine. But the whole challenge, Chris, is in the communication that could be misconstrued by the staff that may be thinking there's a lot of work being dumped on me for really no other additional recognition. So
Right.
it really goes both ways. I think you can kind of do both as long as it's done in a tactful manner.
The Arrow Podcast is brought to you by CMDS, a business breakthrough agency helping brands reinvent and reignite themselves at the core. We work with B2B companies to help them figure out how they're unique and remarkable in their own space, then leverage that information to build great websites, awesome social media strategies, and leadership content that's going to drive more brand awareness to their company. If you're looking to learn more about how we can help you achieve extreme business growth, please reach out to CMDS at 732-706-5555, or you can visit us online at cmdsonline.com. There's a multitude of challenges an organization will have, right? If you were to just outline, I do X, Y, and Z, like really well, like what are maybe the 3 to 5 things that you think that you do really well when working with a brand that maybe helps them change and shape the way the company does business?
Yeah, without question. I mean, our bread and butter is on the leadership and the management development. And with that is because a lot of folks, Chris, you'll see this, is that you're a good runner and you're a good jumper. Man, Chris, are you a good runner and a good jumper? So guess what? We've now promoted you to head of swimming.
Right.
Like what?
Yeah.
Like what?
Yeah.
And so what happens is they'll look at someone that's performing at a high level, make
Right.
the assumption that this ascension to now management,
Right.
especially in sales, holy cow, that sales is the wildest bunch of them all.
Right.
And I work with so many sales executives.
Yep.
And they'll go out there and they'll use some of these systems that are out there, and do that. But what happens is once you might be a really good performer by closing deals, be a killer hunter, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Then all of a sudden you're a manager of people, and then the folks that you're managing are not resonating with you.
Right.
Now you have a multitude of problems. So helping them select and identify this talent, it's not just on the hiring side. It's really, for us, when we're profiling and assessing folks, it's really meant to be on the development side. So assessment, profiling, emotional intelligence, all of that, we have dozens, I'd say over 70 right now, very advanced profilers. Whereas a lot of companies will try to get into bed with 1 or 2. They'll say,
Right.
I'll do disc this and, have a disc tattoo or
Right.
predictive this or,
Right.
strengths that. And there's nothing wrong with that. Those are great tools.
They are. Yep.
We use them.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge is, to me, those are x-rays. You've got a really good snapshot, right? Let's dig in. Let's look at this more as an MRI type of thing.
Yeah.
How is a salesperson's emotional intelligence?
Right.
How are they able to use empathy? How are they building the relationships? How
Right.
are they able to read a room? How are they able to ask the right questions? In addition to what's their sales style and what's their person.
Right.
So now you have a much more. So from a profiling standpoint, we usually come in to help really define what are some of those behaviors that are necessary for the next step. And then
Right.
our delivery of our, training, team buildings. I do a lot of public speaking, and most of the times the speaking that I'll do revolves around how to get teams to work together. I share the story about the escape rooms because Nothing's changed in 15 years since that happened.
Right.
Nothing.
Yeah.
You have teams that may or may not want to be a part of it, Chris.
Yep.
You have time constraints, right? The clock's ticking.
Right.
You have a project to work on. You have different clashing personalities.
Right.
So for me, I'll always reflect back in that moment in time and say, companies that understand that and have a visual, because a lot of people like storytelling, and
Yep.
so we try to tell as many stories as possible, but get to the point.
Yes.
Is that's what we see. So leadership development, management training, helping with digitization of efficiencies. We've noticed a spike in that for us, meaning someone's got either SOPs that are still done the same way, or their onboarding, for God's sakes, takes like 2 weeks.
Right.
Like, no, you can cut that down.
Right.
Use technologies, use some learning systems, do something so that by the time the person hits the floor,
They're ready to go.
they're ready to rock.
Yep.
Time is money. And I tell
Yep.
people all the time, you worry about the business side, we'll handle the people side.
Yep.
And it's a sigh of relief for them.
Right.
So, which is different than having, let's say, a full-time trainer. By the time you're done with benefits and payroll, and you still have to spend on average 80 to 90,000 in systems. You're already deep in the almost $250,000 mark before you even blink.
Right.
So people can realize, look, there's different ways to approach it and go through it. So,
Very interesting. So tell me a little bit about the name Straxo.
oh, Straxo.
Yeah. How did you come up with that name?
So we had a short list. I say we because I have to give a lot of credit to my former business partner,
Okay.
Milton. We started the firm in 2014. We incorporated. 2015 was the launch, so hence the 10 years now. And then he went on to much bigger and better. So, kudos to him. But we had a short list of names. And when I saw this one, I'm like, this is it. And so it's a combination of strategy and execution.
Okay.
And you follow football at all?
Not really.
Not
No.
really?
Yeah,
All right. What about any sports? Yeah.
Just weightlifting.
Weightlifting. Well, that's why you got the guns, dude,
Olympic weightlifting.
Yeah.
That's
My
my
wife's
count.
going to see this and she's going to be like, he works out. Why don't you work out? I'm like, yeah, that's what's going to happen.
This is all just old.
Yeah,
muscle.
no.
I haven't been doing much at all, but I'm coming. I'm
Usually,
coming back.
I'm in shape, of a pair. But I'm like, what happened is when with sports, you always see the clipboard that the coach has when they're running through a play.
Right.
And especially in football or some other things, you'll see it's all about the X's and O's.
Right, yep.
And then you hear companies using that terminology.
Right.
You see IBM as a commercial, X's and O's and all that.
Yeah.
So
I played soccer and basketball. So
all right,
I know,
okay. So the X's and
I'm
O's.
not totally.
So for us, I'm like, what a cool name. It's strategy and execution, but it's ending with the X's and O's. So it ends in XO. So when we kind of realize that that's really what we're about is how do you take a strategy, how do you handle the execution? You'll see these two words being overplayed over and over again in the
100%.
media. But I wanted to keep something succinct and short, but I love the X and O at the end because at the end of the day, it really is how you're planning for what you're doing.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's
and,
clever. Very
yeah,
cool. I
yeah.
love that. So, being in business for 10 years, almost 11, I guess, right? I've been in business for 22, almost 23.
Wow, awesome.
At this point in my career, I can honestly say that I haven't seen a challenge that I haven't seen before, right? And it's just different industries, and maybe the application of what you implement is slightly different. So for you, are you still seeing, or are you things are changing and evolving for sure in your space, right? Are you seeing new things pop into the daily that are new challenges you have to solve that maybe you have to really think about and sit back and say, okay, how am I going to approach this?
Yeah, and so I think if you ask that question to 10 people, you're probably going to get 8 or 9 different answers, and that's because everyone's lens is different as to what they're seeing. One thing that's a common, though, is this technology kind of landscape we're in particular AI,
yep.
is freaking a lot of people out.
Yes, yep.
Where they should be repositioning that as, what can we do to leverage this?
100%.
We
It's
probably-
here regardless.
It is, but I think the misconception around it from the development side, people feel that that is a tool that might be replacing X, Y, and Z in
Right.
particular people. So there's that. Really, it's a powerful tool that's used, and we invested. I'd say our biggest investment dollar-wise has probably been in AI over the last 2 years as to how to help augment systems to make our clients' lives a lot easier.
Right, yep.
How to read a report faster, how to
Right.
come up with some isolated IDPs, individual development plans, in
Yep.
a way that we can use the data. That I'm all about metrics and numbers. See, a lot of people think, oh, training, it's HR. I'm like, no. if you don't have a business savviness to what you're doing and position it that way, it's never going to work.
100%.
So,
That right there is like tremendously important, because people will use it or try to use it to substitute the institutional knowledge that you have, right? And it's never going to be equal or the same.
So when I started my career, I started with Macy's, 800 Flowers, these corporate companies doing this. Then I wound up in a healthcare company that dealt with early intervention services, and that was back in the very early 2000s. And I was afraid I was going to fall into that trap of psychology, my undergrad and grad, and my doctorates in leadership. It's like all this psych stuff. And then the CEO of the company I worked with, John, he would constantly say to me, what are the margins? What do the numbers dictate? And I was like, that's not what I do. I'm all about the psychology of how someone feels. And, he's like, listen, piece of advice, you got to understand the business.
Right.
Otherwise, you'll have a short shelf life. Mm-hmm. Now, I worked for him for 11 years, learned a lot, and then started realizing the companies I work with now, I'm not interested in, someone took 18,000 online courses. Well, what does that mean?
Right.
Rather, the metric be, guess what? We've reduced our onboarding from 88 hours down to 42 hours.
Right.
That's a 50%, 52% increase. And because of that, we have X and Y dollars. So I think, how do you use systems now is a challenge for people to see it as this is a benefit for us, because now all this extra time, extra value, extra money that's back in our pocket can be used for additional growth that the company is needing to do.
Yep.
So instead of us being a vacuum and sucking out those dollars on things that aren't necessary, we customize and deliver all of our leadership and training so that it's very specific to what's going to match the KPIs of the company. So I think right now we're still seeing people doing it more because we have to do it, but AI certainly changed the game.
Yeah, for sure. What has your company done that maybe has helped you, or that has helped you achieve growth, and or like at what point did you notice scaling became easier for you?
Great question, Chris. I really didn't know what I was going to do in 2020. We were doing great.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden,
I think a lot of people were like that.
As Tony Stark in Avengers said, sorry, Earth is closed today. And I'm like, what just happened? And we started to realize then, okay, the traditional way of doing X and Y, start to pivot, and everybody realizing. But then the pendulum swung so much that everyone thought everything was going to be virtual forever.
Right.
So I remember doing a webinar for a risk network company, and I said, well, I think by 2023, maybe 2024, you'll start to see a swing back where now you're going to have people back in the offices, and I think that's going to cause a major problem because that's the first time people are interacting with others. A lot of people were hired during those COVID Zoom days, right? Mm-hmm. And then we realized, you know what? Companies need to be agile. They need to have both. And so they're hybrid, and they're, some days in, some days remote. They have multi-unit locations. They're changing the way that they're conducting and doing business. And what we decided at that point is, let's just change the model in a way that's going to drive the needle for the client, meaning let's remove the stress of them having to ask for things and then we're invoicing them on them. Let's change it to, this is it. This is what we'll commit to, and every employee gets touched. We have services for everyone. Mm-hmm. We have systems, but we have the unlimited consulting.
Right.
And what I realized about the unlimited consulting was they started to take up on that, and then they started asking more questions.
Right.
If they thought they had to pay for this extra, they would be very careful about what they're paying, and they wouldn't have learned as much as they did by having the option of, you can always reach out to us. We're always available. So once we changed that model to this all-inclusive for that, then all of a sudden business went like this.
Right.
We had companies reaching out to us. We only tailored it for the SMBs, small to mid-sized businesses, but yet these larger institutions were reaching out saying, okay, I get it. That's really tailored for them because of the amount of employees they have, but we only have like 80 or 90 district managers, or we only have like 100 of these in store managers, or we only have 100 of, emerging leaders, because I do a lot of high potential stuff. The high potential is my favorite, okay? because a lot of people misconstrue high potential to high performers. There's a huge difference.
Yeah.
And so, then they start realizing, why can't we have all of that, but just for that set population?
Right.
So I went back to my team and I'm like, let's not overthink this.
Right.
Give them what they want.
Yep.
And because of that, we started really now thinking it doesn't matter what size the company is.
Mm-hmm.
I have a company that's only 6 people they ask us to support. 6. They're probably investing the same as a company with 800 people.
Right.
Because for them, the value of what they're doing to succession plan these folks into the next level is it's an amount for them that is the ROIs every year there for them.
Right.
And so for us, that was really it, is changing and pivoting the model. Like I said, I've seen a lot of your case studies and what you've done for companies. I think we share a couple of clients together too and looking at them. And, I'm just amazed, Chris.
Yeah.
I'm amazed because out of everything you have on your site and everything you say, the one word that sticks out the most is breakthrough. Okay.
Yep.
You constantly use that word,
Right.
Whether that's voluntary or not. I assume it is because
Yep.
you're really smart at the way you do. But that's what it is. I tell people, if we can't have a breakthrough conversation, so when I'm having a pitch meeting or a prospect call or an intro call, they say, wow, this was eye-opening.
Right.
We know that they're going to sign with us for multiple years. If it's one of those, okay, well, I have a lot to digest, then maybe they're not the right fit as much as we are. But we have to realize that we have to be equally as careful as to who we work with.
Right.
So being selective actually changed the game. I'd rather say no to some of the folks that I know are not going to help invest in their people or only
Right.
checking boxes.
Yep.
Yeah, it's nice to get that revenue, right, Chris, and add it to the sheet,
100%,
right?
but that's also the disruptive business.
Exactly. And that's also the one that winds up sucking up the most resources.
100%.
And
Yep.
so at the end of the day, the net, it's margin erosion on that client.
Right.
Whereas with others, we may not have strong margins year one because we're investing so much upfront capital.
Right.
But when we start working with them throughout the years, I tell people, we'll grow as you grow.
Yeah.
When you
That's
start
how
to
we are
renew
too.
us,
Yep.
then it's all good. You're locked in at the rate. It'll never go up for you.
Right.
And for us, we're in there in the long term.
Yeah. Very cool. Awesome. So how can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about you and your services?
Telepathy is one way. So, yes, obviously they can go to Straxo.com. They can always ask to swing by.
STRAXO.
Yeah, STRAXO, yes, .com, right?
Mm-hmm.
I tend to be very active on LinkedIn also, so
Okay.
Love connections, love meeting new people. We like hosting people at our Red Bank office too. If somebody wants to come in and they're out of town into New York City, I will always tell them that's the best pizza in the world, regardless of where they come from.
Right.
Especially those St. Louis people. They think
Right.
Provel cheese is a cheese. I'm like, no.
It's a different style
it's
pizza
a whole
out there.
different- oh my God,
It's crazy.
I think I'd rather eat the box, but no, I'm sorry, St. Louis, I love you. And so, it's that's one way to reach us. Certainly, encourage people that if they want to learn more about what we do and how we do it. But always happy to have them talk to our clients. One thing that's also helped change things for us is we have a manufacturing client that looks at one of our large retailers, a huge retailer we work with, as almost, wow, that they're amazing. So I go, why not learn from them? So like, well, how would we do that? So just recently, 2 weeks ago, we took that team to this team's 1 million square foot facility, distribution center, where they did a tour for them to see the back end operations. And they said that for us, we would never have an opportunity to do any of that.
Right.
I go, I have CFOs that are willing to mentor young, kind of interns that are coming in to learn about something about finance. So I like the commingling of the clients and the collaboration approach. And so a lot of clients, they separate. We don't. We like to have that. Someone says, can I talk to the head of HR training at this company? And we broker that too. So it really is, why not? Everyone's there. It's like a think tank. You're only going to learn from them. Plus, you see the value. People learn something from
every experience.
Yeah, the larger company has learned quite a bit as to how to be quick and nimble from the smaller companies because they lost who they were in terms of the people side because they're very much into the process.
Yeah.
So
It's pretty wild. There's so much opportunity, even like in the Fortune 500, Fortune 100s. I was talking to an executive high up at a large financial institution, which I can't say the name of right now, but he was trying to advance his career, and I said, well, do you have employee roadmaps there? And he's like, what's that? And I'm like, it's basically an outline of what you should expect, as far as your own personal growth within the organization and what roles you might be eligible for and the salary increases associated with it. And, you're not going to be able to, like, he was trying to get this new role. It was the highest he can go within his interest within the organization. And, he didn't have any training with this one specific aspect. And in corporate, they're just looking at the recruiter and the hiring manager is just looking at this checklist of things, to mark off. Now, he is way more than capable of handling that role. But, he's also a very fast learner and will study the shit out of whatever he needs to do in order to get there. But he didn't get the role because that checklist box wasn't checked on the checklist. And now he's kind of like in this weird, like, I don't know what my path is. So I'm like, you have to sit down with your hiring manager and discuss what your roadmap is going to look like. So you would want to stay within the organization as well. And, you can craft everything you do towards getting to that next level,
Chris, it drives me absolutely nuts. That is way too parochial for my blood. Now, I understand that in compliance-driven and regulatory roles, you have to have the certain credentials and the criteria.
Right.
That's a given. That's part of what you need to do. But when you have someone with so much potential, enthusiasm, experience,
right,
and what's barring them is item 24A of a 25 checklist,
right, yeah,
that doesn't make sense. The other part about it is I like to always try to put myself in their shoes.
yeah,
and let's say I did wind up somehow circumventing or navigating or being able to get this item checked. Let's say I did complete it and I did. Am I motivated as an employee now for a company that I had to jump through all these hurdles,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
Like it leaves that bad taste in your mouth, right?
Right.
So I always tell people never sugarcoat anything. Be very transparent with your folks.
Right.
The mapping is good. Some companies don't have anything, right?
Right.
They don't even know what the next title is. They actually just create titles as people move up.
Right.
Like there isn't any of those systems. I always ask people, let me see your core values.
Right.
Because every single training we do, we don't keep it. We're very different than any other firm. We actually design the training for the company, and we give them full reproducible rights.
Got it.
No one else wants to do that because all the money is made by the firms in the reproducible
Right.
aspects. I'm
Yep.
like, I'd rather you renew with us because you love us and we're the best and we blow everyone else out of the water rather than sit there and try to ding you 5, 10, 20K on reproducible rights.
Right,
But we always tie it back to the core values. It's like, well, we don't have core values. We have a mission statement. All right, well, it's something to work with, but there's no consistency across the board. When you're dealing with parochial, and we have several of those clients too, and what we realize is they're so myopic in what they do in certain aspects of it, and it's very detailed what they need to develop those folks. Makes life a little easier because you know that what's missing from point A to point B is this, so let's develop that. But some of the intangibles on leadership, my man, doesn't come on a checklist.
Right.
Like, people go and they take these like $5,000 courses on how to do this, or they'll get a certificate from somewhere on how to do that. And then the studies all show that as adult learners, we're only going to retain about 7%.
Yeah.
Maybe as high as 12 if you're lucky enough after day 3.
Yeah, I thought 7 was high.
Yeah. Well, you imagine that now you're expending 90 to 93% of what you've learned goes away after 3 days. Right. In order to pump those numbers up, you have to have reinforcements. You have to have the open communication. You have to have habit-changing technology that allows you to track all that. Right. And those are the things that we invest in to let people know there's no trail now. There's no smoke trail. Like you have a consistency across the board.
Right.
And I think when they start to see that, they realize, hold on a second, we can actually max revenue this. And then there's spillage. Someone gets so excited about what they learned, they start to tell other people about it and showcase what they do. And there was a study done in India with blue-collar factory workers. We're talking 6th grade education. I think MIT did this study 5-6 years ago. Emotional intelligence training for some of the supervisors. What they realized is there was a spike in people's EQ increasing for those that reported into them because of the spillage that came over. So it's wild. You invest in the people, and everyone else is going to get that as well.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. That's awesome. Well, listen, bud, we're at time. I appreciate you coming in, and it was great to learn about your story and what you do for people and companies.
Oh, man, pleasure was all mine, man. You're awesome.
Yeah,
CMDS is awesome. Yeah. And to another 20 plus years for you, my man.
Yes,
and always going to be your biggest fan rooting in the corner, man. Really appreciate you taking the time.
I appreciate it.
You're class act, man. Yeah.
You're the class act.
All right. Pleasure,
well, thanks so much for coming on.
All right, buddy.